Welcome to Essential Dialogues. Today we're diving deep into something pretty interesting, Bitcoin mining in Ethiopia.
Mm.
Yeah, it's kind of an unexpected hub for this whole industry,
Yeah,
attracting a ton of investments and potentially really changing its economy.
yeah, lots of possibilities.
Ready to unpack all of that with me?
Absolutely. It's a story with some interesting twists and turns, that's for sure.
Yeah, no kidding. When I first started looking into this, I was really struck by Ethiopia's sort of changing stance towards cryptocurrency.
Right.
We always hear about governments being really wary of things like Bitcoin, but Ethiopia seems to be embracing it, well, at least when it comes to mining.
Yeah, you've definitely hit on a key point there. Initially, the National Bank of Ethiopia was very cautious. They issued warnings about the risks of using cryptocurrencies.
Mhm.
But there's been a noticeable shift recently.
Yeah.
The government's starting to see the potential economic benefits, especially with Bitcoin mining.
So it's like they've gone from, kind of tiptoeing around it to, okay, let's figure out how we can make this work for us.
Yeah, exactly. And a real concrete sign of this shift is the requirement for all crypto service providers, including miners, to register with the Information Network Security Administration, or NSA.
Mhm.
This is a move that really signals that Ethiopia is getting more comfortable with crypto. They're seeing it as a potential source of revenue and foreign exchange.
Okay, so the government's opening the door.
Yeah.
But what is it about Ethiopia specifically that's attracting these Bitcoin mining companies? Why are they choosing to set up shop there?
Well, it really boils down to one word: energy.
Energy, okay.
Ethiopia has this abundance of renewable energy resources,
Mhm.
especially hydropower. And this translates to cheap and readily available electricity, which is exactly what Bitcoin mining needs.
Right, because it requires a lot of energy to run all those powerful computers
Mm.
that solve those complex math problems that verify the transactions.
Yeah, exactly.
So in a way, Ethiopia's natural resources are giving it a real advantage in this digital world.
Precisely. And we're not just talking about potential here, we're seeing real investment pouring in. For example, Ethiopian Investment Holdings, or EIH, has partnered with Hong Kong's West Data Group to build Bitcoin mining infrastructure, and they're backing this with a massive $250 million investment.
Wow, $250 million. That's a serious vote of confidence. Are there other examples of this trend in action?
Absolutely. Ethiopian Electric Power, or EEP, is already supplying electricity to 25 Bitcoin trading companies,
Hmm.
mostly Chinese companies,
Right.
and they're generating $55 million in revenue from these contracts.
Wow.
What's even more significant is that EEP has allocated a whopping 600 megawatts specifically for Bitcoin mining.
Okay, now I'm really curious.
Yeah.
What does 600 megawatts actually mean in the grand scheme of things? Is that a lot?
It's huge. To put it in perspective, that represents about 2.25% of all Bitcoin mining activity happening globally. It puts Ethiopia in the same league as major players like the US, Hong Kong, and other big mining centers in Asia.
Right.
This is not some small-scale operation. It's a sign that Ethiopia is quickly becoming a force to be reckoned with in the Bitcoin mining world.
So we've got the government warming up to crypto, this influx of investment, and Ethiopia making its mark on the global mining scene.
Yeah.
Definitely sounds like a boom.
Oh, wow.
But what does this mean for Ethiopia's economy in the long run? That's what I'm really interested in.
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And this is where things get even more interesting. Ethiopia faces a significant trade deficit.
Okay.
They import much more than they export,
Right.
which leads to a drain on their foreign currency reserves.
Hmm.
Bitcoin mining could potentially turn this around.
Oh, interesting. You're saying it could actually help them balance the book, so to speak?
Exactly. By using their surplus electricity to mine Bitcoin and then selling it on the international market,
Hmm.
they can generate much-needed foreign currency. Some estimates suggest that this could add a substantial $2 to $4 billion to Ethiopia's GDP, potentially turning Bitcoin mining into one of their major industries.
Okay, that's a significant boost. And we've already seen concrete examples of this revenue generation with the $55 million from EP's contracts.
Right.
But I have to ask, are there any downsides to this?
Mhm.
It sounds almost too good to be true.
You're right to be cautious. There are definitely challenges and potential downsides that need careful consideration. One is the fact that the regulatory framework is still in its early stages.
Okay.
It's evolving as we speak, which means there's a degree of uncertainty for both investors and the government.
So there's a need for more clarity and stability on the regulatory front.
Yeah.
That makes sense. What else should we be thinking about?
Well, there are also environmental concerns.
Right.
Bitcoin mining consumes a lot of energy, and even though Ethiopia relies heavily on renewable sources, there's still a carbon footprint associated with producing and transmitting that electricity. Finding ways to minimize that environmental impact is crucial.
Yeah, that's a really important point. It's not just about economic gains, it's about sustainable development too. Are there other challenges that come to mind?
Of course. And perhaps the most significant one is Bitcoin's infamous volatility.
Oh, yeah.
Its price can fluctuate dramatically, which poses risks not just for investors, but for Ethiopia's economic stability as a whole.
Right.
If the value of Bitcoin were to plummet, those foreign currency earnings could evaporate quickly, leaving the country vulnerable.
So there's a real need for careful planning and risk management to make sure that the potential benefits outweigh these risks.
Absolutely, it's a balancing act.
Yeah.
Ethiopia has a remarkable opportunity to leverage this technology for economic growth, but they need to proceed cautiously and strategically to ensure those benefits are long-lasting and sustainable.
This has been incredibly insightful. I'm already starting to see the complexities of this trend unfold.
Yeah.
But before we get too deep into those broader challenges, I think it's worth looking at one company that's making a big splash in Ethiopia, BIT Mining.
Excellent point. BIT Mining's recent activities provide a perfect example of this trend in action and the kind of investments we're seeing.
Great, let's delve into that. What exactly have they been up to in Ethiopia? I'm all ears.
Well, they've acquired a 51 megawatt Bitcoin mine and a staggering 17,869 mining rigs
Wow.
for a total of $14.3 million.
Whoa, that's a lot of computing power. Sounds like they're going all in on Ethiopia.
They are, and it's interesting to look at how they financed this acquisition. They paid $2.3 million in cash and covered the remaining $12 million by issuing new shares. So essentially, they're using their equity to fuel their expansion into this new market.
So they're betting on the future, believing that this move will ultimately increase their value. What's the timeline for getting this operation up and running?
Well, the acquisition is happening in two phases. The first phase involves getting 35 megawatts of operational capacity online immediately, along with transferring all those mining rigs to Ethiopia. This part of the deal is expected to be finalized very soon.
So they're not wasting any time. They're getting a significant chunk of the mining operation going right away. What about the rest of it?
The remaining capacity will be transferred once the construction of the site is completed, so it's a two-pronged approach. Get things moving quickly with the existing infrastructure and then scale up further once the new construction is finished.
It sounds like a well-calculated strategy. It seems BIT Mining isn't alone in this venture. Earlier you mentioned that most of the company's EEP is supplying power to our Chinese.
Right.
Is there a reason for this concentration of Chinese companies in Ethiopia?
There's definitely a pattern here, and it ties back to what's happening in China itself.
Okay.
Over the past few years, China has cracked down on Bitcoin mining within its borders. They've cited concerns about energy consumption and its impact on financial stability.
So these companies are essentially looking for greener pastures, or rather places with cheaper and more readily available electricity.
Precisely. And Ethiopia fits the bill perfectly. It offers an abundance of cheap hydropower, making it a very attractive destination for these companies looking to relocate their operations.
It's a fascinating example of how global trends and regulatory shifts in one country can create opportunities in another. But this focus on Ethiopia also raises some important questions. We've talked about the environmental impact of Bitcoin mining, and I'm curious to dig deeper into that aspect.
Sure.
What are the specific concerns and how are they being addressed?
That's a crucial aspect of this entire discussion. We can't ignore the fact that Bitcoin mining is an energy-intensive process.
Right.
And while Ethiopia's reliance on hydropower is a positive factor, there are still environmental costs associated with generating and distributing that electricity.
So even renewable energy sources aren't completely without their impact on the environment.
Exactly. Think about the construction of dams for hydropower, the potential disruption of natural ecosystems, and the carbon footprint associated with manufacturing and transporting the equipment needed for these mining operations. These are all factors that need to be taken into account.
So how can Ethiopia ensure that this mining boom doesn't come at the expense of its environmental sustainability?
It all comes down to responsible development and robust regulations. The government needs to implement strict guidelines for mining operations, including measures to minimize their environmental footprint.
Could you give us some specific examples of what those measures might look like?
Certainly, promoting energy efficiency within mining operations is key.
Okay.
Encouraging the use of the latest, most energy-efficient mining hardware can make a significant difference.
Mm,
Another important step is to incentivize companies to invest in additional renewable energy projects beyond hydropower.
right.
This diversification can further reduce reliance on any single energy source and lessen the overall impact.
So it's about finding ways to make this industry more sustainable in the long run. That brings us back to the bigger picture. Can Bitcoin mining truly be a sustainable path to economic growth for Ethiopia?
That's the central question, and honestly, it's a complex one with no easy answers.
It's not just the simple equation of more mining equals more money.
Exactly. It's a multifaceted issue with economic, environmental, and social dimensions.
We've talked about the economic potential, the environmental challenges, and the regulatory hurdles. But what about the social impact? How will this trend affect the lives of everyday Ethiopians?
That's an essential aspect to consider. The influx of investments and the development of a new industry can create job opportunities, potentially boost local economies, and contribute to infrastructure development. But there's also the risk of displacement of communities, potential exploitation of workers, and the need to ensure that the benefits of this industry are distributed equitably and don't just go to a select few.
So it's a mixed bag. There's the potential for positive change, but also the need for careful planning and ethical considerations to ensure that the benefits reach the wider population and don't exacerbate existing inequalities.
You've hit the nail on the head. And this brings us to another crucial factor in this whole equation: the role of the Ethiopian government.
Right. We talked about the evolving regulatory framework earlier, but what specific steps can the government take to ensure responsible development and maximize the benefits for the country and its people?
Transparency and accountability are paramount. Establishing clear regulations and ensuring that companies adhere to those regulations is crucial.
Okay.
This includes environmental protections, labor standards, and mechanisms to prevent corruption and ensure fair competition.
So it's not just about attracting investment. It's about setting clear rules of the game and holding everyone accountable to those rules.
Precisely. The government also needs to invest in education and training programs to equip its workforce with the skills needed to participate in this new industry. This can help create a more sustainable and inclusive ecosystem where Ethiopians are not just passive recipients of foreign investment, but active participants in this technological transformation.
It sounds like a delicate balancing act. On one hand, there's this exciting opportunity to leverage technology for economic advancement, and on the other, there's the responsibility to do so in a way that benefits the entire nation and safeguards the environment.
You've perfectly captured the essence of the situation. It's a complex and evolving landscape, and it's one that requires careful navigation and thoughtful decision-making at every level.
This has been incredibly eye-opening. I'm starting to see the full scope of this trend, the opportunities it presents, and the challenges it poses. What key takeaways should our listeners keep in mind as they follow this story unfolding in Ethiopia?
I'd say the most important takeaway is that this is not just a story about Bitcoin mining. It's a story about Ethiopia's ambition to position itself as a player in the global tech landscape.
Hmm.
It's about attracting foreign investment, creating new industries, and potentially transforming its economy.
But it's also a story about responsibility, sustainability, and ensuring that this transformation benefits all Ethiopians and doesn't come at the cost of the environment or social equity.
Exactly. It's a story that highlights the complex interplay of technology, economics, and development, reminding us that progress must be inclusive and sustainable to be truly meaningful.
It's fascinating to see how a single technology like Bitcoin can have such a wide-ranging impact on a country.
Yeah.
What stands out to you as the most significant aspect of this whole trend?
You know, for me, it's the ripple effect.
Yeah.
The influx of Bitcoin mining isn't just about generating revenue or boosting GDP. It's about creating a whole new ecosystem. We're talking about the development of infrastructure, the potential for new industries to emerge, the transfer of knowledge and skills. It's really quite something.
So it's about more than just Bitcoin itself.
Right.
It's about the potential for wider economic diversification and technological advancement.
Precisely. Think about the ancillary industries that could benefit. We could see a surge in demand for construction services, IT expertise, logistics, even financial services as this industry matures.
That's a really good point. It's like a catalyst for growth that goes beyond just the immediate impact of mining itself.
Hmm.
It's about creating a more dynamic and interconnected economy.
Exactly. And it also highlights the global nature of this phenomenon.
Right.
We're seeing companies from all over the world, particularly China, investing in Ethiopia.
Mm-hmm.
It's a reminder that we live in an interconnected world where technological advancements can create opportunities that transcend borders.
It's like a new kind of gold rush. But
Mm.
instead of digging for precious metals, they're using computing power to mine digital currency.
That's a great analogy. And just like those historical gold rushes, there are winners and losers, booms and busts. It's crucial for Ethiopia to navigate this new landscape carefully, learn from the past, and put in place measures to ensure that this boom benefits the entire nation.
So for our listeners who are following this trend, whether tech enthusiasts, business professionals, finance enthusiasts, or investors, what key insights should they take away from our deep dive today?
I'd say the biggest takeaway is that Ethiopia is becoming a real hotbed of activity in the world of Bitcoin mining. It's a dynamic landscape full of opportunities and risks, and it's a story that's still unfolding.
It's a reminder that the world of technology is constantly evolving, and those who stay informed and adapt quickly are the ones who are most likely to benefit from these emerging trends.
Exactly. Ethiopia's story is a fascinating example of how a developing nation can leverage its resources and position itself at the forefront of a global technological shift.
This deep dive has been incredibly insightful. I'm personally excited to see how this trend unfolds in the coming years and what it means for Ethiopia's future.
It's a story worth watching, that's for sure. Thanks for joining us for this exploration of Bitcoin mining in Ethiopia.
And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Essential Dialogues podcast for more deep dives into the trends shaping our world.